Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. We have a very, very special guest with us today, Maya Sarfaty, who is the director of Love It Was Not, which is the first documentary we are seeing in this year's Screening the Holocaust film series. And before we begin, a couple of things. I do want to thank the sponsors of this event, the Holocaust Teacher Institute at the University of Miami School of Education and Human Development, the Miami Jewish Film Festival, of course, the Holocaust Memorial. My name is Danny Reed. I'm the education director there. And also the Sue and Leonard Miller Center for Contemporary Judaic Studies at the George Feldenkrais Program in Judaic Studies at the University of Miami. So welcome and thank you. We're going to be speaking with Maya for a few minutes, about 30 minutes, on her incredible and poignant documentary. And we are going to have the Q&A available at the bottom of your screen. If you do want to ask Maya any questions, we ask that you type your questions into the Q&A. And we're going to make sure we get to as many of them as possible, because I'm sure many of you have a lot of questions. So, Maya, why don't we begin? I actually like to start, if you can just say a couple words, introduce yourself and what your background is, and then we'll delve into the film.
First of all, thank you for hosting me, Danny, and the Miami Jewish Film Festival, and this great series of Holocaust films. We are very honored to be here, to be part of it. I'm Maya Sarfaty. I'm a film director, mother to Yotam and to Noga. My husband, Nir Sar, is also the producer of the film. I'm the director of Love It Was Not and The Most Beautiful Woman, which is a short version, kind of a short version of the story. It's very different, but the same story.
Well, welcome, and we're so happy that you're here and could be able to join us to just kind of, in a way, I don't even know where to begin. I told you before that I watched this documentary 2 times in a row because it all had to sink in, and there was a lot of things that went through my mind. Was first of all, an amazing story, an incredible story, one of millions of stories that are out there that are not told yet, thousands of stories that are not told yet about the Holocaust. But the things that went through my mind was, is this really true? How could she have this relationship with an SS officer in Auschwitz? And from how dare she to immediately, who are we to judge? How can we judge? And I'm wondering first, before we go into, if you can, touch that subject about maybe why you chose this as a topic for a film, and did that, those questions of how could you do this and who are we to judge, because we can't understand really what they went through, how that went through your process.
Well, I guess I should start with my relation to the story. I believe I was only 7 or 8 when I first heard the story of the Tzipron sisters. Mickey Marin, she's Rosa's daughter. She was my first acting teacher when I was just a little child. And she entrusted the story into my hands. And actually, I tried to tell it in many forms and in all kinds of mediums along the years, but it never felt quite right. I think you touched the main issue. This story is so unbelievable. So when I tried to write as a novel or as a script, it felt like someone with a very sick mind imagined this unbelievable story. And 5 years ago, Mickey and I contacted, I actually think it's already 6 years ago. We contacted Dogma. She's the SS officer's daughter.
Right.
And we learned that she's very open and willing to talk and to cooperate. And when she gave me his diaries and home videos, I believe that was the point in which I realized I finally have the means to tell this incredible story, the full and the complete version of the story of Helena and Rosa. The thing that most fascinated me in this story was the ambivalence of the two main figures, the SS officer and the Jewish victim. You can't really speak about Franz as pure evil. He was a sadistic SS officer in Auschwitz. There is no argue about that. And after our very thorough research in Austria, I have no doubt that he was part in the select. He took a very regular part in the selection process in Auschwitz, but he also was quite a romantic and tender man, you know, that is capable of pure love and compassion. And Elena is also not the classic imaginary victim. She's a strong woman with a strong survival drive, willing to do whatever she needs in order to save herself and to save her sister. And these gray zones between evil and pure, they are the areas that drives me as a storyteller. That's what fascinated me in the story from the beginning. And actually, this is why I think the story is so important to tell, because evil is a very human, what's the word, tchuna?
Well, it's an impulse.
Yeah, it's very human. It's not some kind of a monster out there. So I think that the main thing in the story is the ambivalence between right and wrong, evil and pure, and knowing that it lies among us.
Well, you know, it's interesting you bring that up because, you know, when I was thinking of questions to ask, you know, and seeing those films of him when he's 60 years after the war, 60 years after the events, and he's an old man sitting in the garden, you know, I thought of like Hannah Arendt, the Banality of Evil. You know, banal means simple or boring or obvious. On the one hand, yes. But on the other hand, you know, even the images from the trial when he's a middle-aged man, we don't know him as the young sadistic SS officer. So, you know, go ahead.
For me, the moment I opened my laptop and found this footage of Franz Wunsch sitting in his backyard in t-shirt and trousers and speaking freely about his past, about Mengele, talking about Mengele with sparkling eyes, like that's his bestie. And well, that's Mengele we are talking about. If we're talking about pure evil, then well, and I can say that even 60 years later, after the war, Franz never expressed regret about what happened. Never. They had Mein Kampf in their home. He used to meet comrades, as she says in the short film. She said she's talking about it. Dogma, his daughter. So his character is very. I'm very ambivalent about her as well, because on one hand he saved Elena more than once, and he saved her sister, and he risked himself. He truly did risk himself for her, but he did it because he loved her, not because he thought that what is going on in Auschwitz is wrong and it should be stopped. This is the main thing, I think, that I realized about him.
So in a way, what you're saying is those films are even chilling in cold in a way, because here he is as this old man, but he is able to speak unapologetically and openly about what he did and what happened.
Well, I think it's not very different from the Austrians. I don't want to speak in general, but I think that Austria never really dealt with its past, not like Germany. For example, Germany till today is looking to prosecute her war criminals. And in Austria, the trial of Franz in 1972 was the last trial. And he got acquitted like everyone else in this pool of trials. So I don't think it's very different. On the contrary, I think he really represents something. But I can say that I spent some time in Austria in the last 5 years, and I can say that I feel that now the third generation is curious and is willing to talk and is willing to look straight into the past and to take responsibility. I think it's far enough now.
Right. Well, that's a positive step. That's a very positive step for Austria. I'd like to turn to Helena and her sister. So you were never able to meet them personally, correct?
No, it's very tragic. Yeah. It's a very tragic thing, because all my life I was a step away from both of them through Mickey. Right. And actually the first time I've been in Rosa's home was in her Shiva. After she died, I came to visit Mickey, to bring my condolences. Never met them. And one of my biggest issues making this film was that my three protagonists were already dead. So I didn't have the privilege that most documentary directors have, to speak with your protagonists and to take them to places and to create scenes. And I realized that I have to find other survivors who remembers the story and can tell me about it. So I spent 2016 and most of 2017 at the Yad Vashem archive in Jerusalem, looking for testimonies of women survivors who were among the first transports to Auschwitz or worked in the Canada facilities. I believe I watched dozens, if not hundreds, of shocking testimonies of Auschwitz survivors, hoping they would remember and mention Elena, Rosa, and Franz. Danny, it was a terrible period in my life, I can tell you that. I used to wake up in terror in the middle of the night.
Just from hearing all those stories.
Yes. I used to cry. Well, I cried more than usual back then, I can tell you that. But there were also moments of light in these days, at least from a scriptwriter point of view.
Right.
Because to my surprise, quite a few of the survivors devoted precious minutes of their personal testimony to the story. And those few minutes were a kind of a window, you know, and through it I could peek into the past, into the history. Their words helped me understand what is the day meaning of the bombastic headline, an affair between an SS officer and Jewish prisoner in Auschwitz. Right. They gave color and smell and sound to the story. They gave it life. I was able to locate 7 of the women and interview them myself.
Right, that was my next question. Oh, good. Yeah.
And 2 of them are no longer alive by now, and have not seen the film. The rest of the testimonies in the film are the product of the very important and valuable efforts of Yad Vashem and the Shoah Foundation and Steven Spielberg, the recording testimonies project. I call these brave and beautiful women in the film the chorus of 1,000 women. For me, all of them together are the 4th protagonist of the film. There is Elena, Rosa, Franz, and the women's chorus.
Right.
Like in the classic Greek tragedy, the chorus accompanies and unfolds the story. But there is one big difference. Here, the chorus does not speak in one voice. On the contrary, each and every one of them brings a different voice and a different gaze at Elena and the whole story.
Right.
And I love each and every one of these women. They are brave and honest and nasty and empathetic and full of envy. They are wonderfully human.
You say envy. Do you think they envied her to a certain point because she was so protected?
I think they had envied the fact that she had advantages. This is the word this is the word I was lacking. That they didn't, and she had better chances to survive because of Franz. You can't ignore that. And he brought things and food and pillow and there is one woman in the film that says that the main thing was that he treated her like a human being. He saw her so basic, and she had a kind of a glimpse in Auschwitz of how life could have been outside of the camp. So yes, I have no doubt that that was more than one person who envied her in Auschwitz. I have no doubt.
But it was interesting when you get to the point of her traveling to Austria for the trial, and you cut to a couple of these women, and they understood. I think one even said that it was the humane thing to do, and that really surprised me. That they would say that.
I think that no one can understand Helena. No, I said I'm sure that there were women that envied her, and on the same time, I can say that no one can understand Helena as the people who were there with her,
right?
Who survived it, who knows what does it mean to be in Auschwitz. We can only imagine this terror. Luckily. But I think that more than one in the film says no one can judge. In Auschwitz, you do whatever you need in order to survive.
Right. And certainly, I don't think we can judge either. Not at all.
We can say that now, 2021, but back then in the early 50s, when all the survivors just came to Israel, there was a very different atmosphere in Israel. We got treating the survivors, because the main question, unspoken question, was, how come you survived?
Right.
What have you done in order to survive, especially if you're a woman?
Mhm.
And now imagine that you are Elena, that really had a relationship with an SS officer in Auschwitz. Imagine this feeling of being here, being accused for surviving. Only in the 60s, in the Eichmann trial, the atmosphere in Israel was changed regarding towards the survivors, and the survivors themselves started talking and telling their story. And the family myth tells that Helena sat at her home with the radio, listening to the Eichmann trial. And at some point, she collapsed and started to cry. And at that point, she lost her voice. And from that moment, she never sang again. But I can say she never sang again, but she started talking. And once Helena started talking, she never stopped. Even though I can also say that along the years, I listened to more than one testimony of Helena. And along the years, she was willing to talk more and more about her personal story.
Right.
For instance, in the Yad Vashem testimony, which I'm using only by voice, the sound track of this testimony, she can't even say his name. When the interviewer is asking her, what was the SS officer name? She's just, I can't speak, quit, stop the camera, I don't want to talk. She jumps chronologically, and she says, I came, and then my sister came. And in the Spielberg, 15 years later, when the Spielberg project is filming her, she's already willing to talk, and she's even saying, at some point, I had feelings for him.
Right, and that's even much later. That was probably in the 90s.
You
know, a few years before she died. You know, I can even so during the 1960s, and even after the Eichmann trial, the fact that she was beginning to speak was a very brave act, because there still was a stigma attached to being a survivor. You know,
yes. And there's in the film, there's the moment in which the two sisters is going to the interview. And back then, it was in the late 80s. Back then, we had only one channel in Israel. And everyone was sitting in front of the TV and watched this specific program. So everybody watched this film, this program, and it was a very dramatic moment, because Rosa is actually accusing her publicly for saving her, for not letting her die with her children. And after this show, it's not in the film, but after this show, they having a big argue, like Mickey is saying, and Elena is begging to Rosa to take the curse off, the curse that she cursed her in Auschwitz after she learned her children died. And after this big argument, Helena is having an heart attack, and she's was rushed to the hospital. So it was a very, very dramatic moment in the two sisters' life. But I can say that the two sisters, there were actually three sisters. Miriam, she came to Israel before Rosa, but she never came back. She stayed in Israel. So the three sisters here in Israel were very, very close to each other. And they had, like everything else in this story, a very ambivalent relationship. Mm-hmm. They were very close and tight and deep love, and they understood each other like no one else could. On one hand, and on the other hand, there was a very big anger and something that never healed.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
That I can.
How can you?
Yeah, that I can understand. Before we move to questions, I do want to. I know that you wanted to show some images, and I wanted to talk about. I don't know if this connects with how you told the story, and what the concept that you used to visually to help tell the story.
Yes, well, one of the biggest problem I faced, the second, if the first one was the fact that my protagonists are not alive, then the second one was the lack of footage. Because the little we have from Auschwitz is very known, and everybody already saw it. And cinema is a visual art. So I need something to show, a way to tell the story. And it actually was like in the movies. It was in the middle of the night. I was like, whoa, I have an enlightenment. And I woke up Neil. I'm not sure if I mentioned him. Neil Saar is my husband and my producer. He was very involved in the making of the film. And I told him I have it. And he said, okay, tell me about it in the morning. I said, no, now. And I realized that the answer lies within the film, within the story, I mean. Because for most of his life, Franz made these photo montages of Helena.
Right.
Placing her in different clothing and different backgrounds. I believe it was a way for him to imagine an alternative life they could have had together. Franz did it in order to see the pictures he wanted to see, and I borrowed and developed the technique to see the pictures I wanted to see. I worked with two wonderful Israeli artists, Shlomit Gofer and Ayelet Albenda. We worked with real archival photos from the period, from the war and the camps. And we made this kind of 3D multi-layered photo montage. I can show you some pictures.
Yeah, you want to show us? That would be great.
Right. Yes, you can see it. Okay. Now it's better here, actually.
It also gave everything such depth. Instead of, some documentaries, they'll just pan a camera over a picture, a 2D picture. But what you did was really gave a depth to the images, and also gave added depth to the story that we were watching.
Thank you. Thank you. It was all handmade and shot in a studio. It was intentionally made quite roughly. In this way, I thought that the audience will be able to distinguish between a real valid historical document and imaginary illustration of my creation. It was very important to me that in every moment of the film, it will be very clear what is real and what is imagination. This is Shlomit. In the first stage, Ayelet made a digital photo montage, and in the second stage, Ayelet cut it to layers, and we put it on this maquette, a small stage model, and we shot it on the other side, and we shot it in the studio. going up and through and under.
Wow. That really is something. That really is something.
Yeah.
That was, now, I know artists borrow from each other. Did you borrow that technique from any other documentary you've seen, or you just thought that because of what Franz did with Helena's picture, that this would make a good?
Actually, from the inspiration is from Franz, and I know the technique since from my theater. I passed before
Right.
starting making films. I did the theater.
If anybody has I have a couple more questions from Maya, but if anybody has any questions themselves, please feel free to type them into the Q&A so we can take a look. But you mentioned that there are several main characters in the film aside from Helena and Rosa and Franz. There's also one that we mentioned briefly, which is the daughter, Dogma.
Dogma.
And it's interesting. Well, first of all, I find it interesting that she was so open with her father's story, but even with her, there seems to be no guilt or remorse about what her father did.
Well, if we're talking about that, then please let me share again my screen. My short film, The Most Beautiful Woman, actually deals with the second generation and the way each side copes with the past of the story of the past story of his family. And the climax of the film is a meeting between the daughter of the SS and the children of the survivors. I brought Dagmar here to Israel, and here is Dagmar and Mickey sitting in Mickey's home. The meeting.
Mickey is Rosa's daughter, not.
Yes, she's Rosa's daughter. She's the one. Rosa is the sister who lost her children in Auschwitz.
Right.
So actually, these are Mickey's brother and sister who died there.
Right.
Aviva, 6 years old, and Gideon, 3 days old. And in this specific scene, the picture you are watching, Dagmar is telling Mickey that her father, he worked in the laundry room in Auschwitz. And I ask you, Danny, was there a laundry service that the inmates in Auschwitz got? Because Canada wasn't a laundry service. Canada was the place in which all the belongings of the Jewish people who came to Auschwitz were stolen. And Mickey is not letting her go, and she's forcing her to face the truth, and she's telling her, your father knew what is going on. So it was a very, very dramatic moment. And I can tell you that I realized that the only thing that is our responsibility, because I can't blame Dagmar for what her father did 75, 80 years ago.
Right.
She's not the same person, that's not her doing. But the only thing I do know that our responsibility nowadays is to know the history, know what happened.
Right. No.
This is the only thing I feel I can demand or expect. I can tell you that Love It Was Not won the Student Academy Award in LA, and we've been there for the ceremony.
Right.
And Love It Was Not won the Doc Aviv, which is the most important documentary film festival in Israel. And now we are racing to the big Oscar in America.
Right. You are a best documentary nominee, or trying to be?
We are aiming to be a nominee. We are racing big like Netflix and
Right.
Amazon and Apple TV. So we are very underground film, but I feel the story is very strong and important, and I'm involved.
Well, I wish you the best with that. I think it is a very strong story and deserves to be seen. If you have a couple more minutes, I see a couple of questions. So let's see what we have. And Hidea Markovitz asks, could you repeat Maya's connection to Helena? And who is, well, Mickey, we answered. Who is Mickey? Mickey is Rosa, the sister's daughter. But can you just repeat briefly your connection to Helena?
Mickey was my acting and dancing teacher when I was just a little child. She is my artistic mother and my best friend. And I know the story through her. Yeah.
And where did you grow up? Where was this? What town was this?
Netanya. Netanya. Born and raised in Netanya and currently based in Jaffa.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. And one last question that was asked is going back to Franz. Is there any parts of his story that you would like to add? Things that might that you had to, for time's sake, or just that you had to cut out of the documentary, that if you could have made it a little longer, you might have felt was important information?
I can. Helena says that the song that she sang in their first meeting in his birthday party was Liebe war es nie.
Mm-hmm.
Love It Was Not. Actually, the real translation is it was never love, but Helena says love it was not, and I'm going with her. So this is why the name of the film. In his Franz diary, he says that the words of the song that she sang at that moment was, "My heart is homesick for your love." So her version, "Love It Was Not." His version, "My heart is homesick for your love." I think that these two versions tell everything about the way each one of them wanted to remember or to tell the world the story. Personally, I don't think any of these songs was the one that she really sang at the moment, at the real moment. But I think we can learn a lot about their feelings and their perspective years after about the story. Yes, no. I really wanted it to be in the film, and it didn't happen.
Right. Well, I have one last question before we go that I'm very curious. You mentioned that from the other women that you interviewed, a few are still alive. Have any of them seen the film? And what was the reaction?
Of course, the best reactions. I must say that the reaction that I was most afraid of were of the family, of course, mm-hmm. and the other survivors. And there were very good reactions. They thought they actually some of them actually invited me to screen and talk about the film in their for their friends and family. It was very moving and touching, and getting the recognition from them and the approval was a very important moment for me as the director of the film. Yeah.
Has Dogma seen it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was,
I think we got all the. I think we understood you completely.
It was a bit more complex on this side, but on the bottom line that she felt the film is fair.
Okay. All right.
Fair.
Okay. Good. Well, Maya, I want to thank you so much. I know we're staying up a little late. I'm glad the baby has managed to stay asleep.
Hopefully, I don't know. The door is
hopefully, you don't know.
Closed, so I won't hear.
But I want to wish you the best of luck. I hope we're looking for the Oscars. We'll keep our fingers crossed for the Oscars, because this is just, it's an amazing story. And, as you said,
actually, you can have 5th November. We are going on cinemas in LA and New York. And please tell everyone you know in New York and LA to go and watch it on the big screen. That is the biggest help we can give to this film.
We will spread the word. We will spread the word.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. So Love It Was Not was the first of 2 films that we're doing in this fall screening the Holocaust series. The other 2, and I want you to keep an eye out, everybody, for them, is one is Finding Manny, which is about a Holocaust survivor's trip to an orphanage where he was during the war. And that is going to be made available starting Sunday, November 7th. And the third film is called The Auschwitz Report. And I have seen this movie. It's an incredible story of 2 Slovakians who escaped Auschwitz to bring the news of what was happening in Auschwitz to the rest of the world during the war. And that will be made available on December 10th. So watch your emails for news about those. And Maya, once again, toda rabah, thank you very much. Batzlacha with all your efforts with this amazing film. And
it was great talking to you. Thank you.
Good talking to you too. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.